The distress signal had been traveling through space for 17 days. It moved from one relay station to another, crossing thousands of light years, begging anyone who would listen. The message was simple. The people were dying. Their world was burning. They needed help. Ambassador stood in the ruins of what had once been the Grand Council chamber. The beautiful crystal walls were cracked and blackened from weapons fire. Bodies of his people lay everywhere. Above him, through the broken ceiling, he could see the dark shapes of warships blocking out the stars. He was old. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray and his 4 arms trembled as he held the communication device. He had sent the same message to every major species in the galaxy. The Collective, the Consortium, the Empire, all of them were powerful. All of them had large fleets. All of them could stop this slaughter. None of them came. The responses arrived one by one. Each one was polite. Each one expressed sympathy. And each one said the same thing in different words. We cannot help you. They are too strong. We do not wish to start a war. Had lived for 300 years. He had seen his people build great cities and explore distant stars. Now he watched them die, and no one in the galaxy cared enough to save them. His assistant, a young named, ran into the chamber. Her face was covered in dust and her robes were torn. Ambassador, the ground forces have broken through the eastern barrier. We have perhaps 1 hour before they reach this building. Nodded slowly, and our military. Gone, the last of our ships were destroyed this morning. He looked at the communication device one more time. There was one more signal he could send. It would go to a small planet on the edge of explored space, a world called Earth. The species there called themselves humans. They had only been traveling among the stars for a short time. Their technology was limited. Their fleet was small. But had heard stories about them. Strange stories. Stories about a species that would fight against impossible odds. A species that did not know when to give up. He had nothing left to lose. Send the signal to the human world, he said. Perhaps they are different. Looked at him with sad eyes. The humans, they are weak. They have no reason to help us. We have never even spoken to them. I know, placed his hand on her shoulder. But sometimes the ones you do not expect are the ones who answer. 6 weeks away, on a cold metal station orbiting Neptune, Commander Jake Harrison was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee. He was a big man with broad shoulders and gray hair at his temples. His face carried the lines of someone who had seen too many battles and buried too many friends. Relay Station Omega was quiet. It was always quiet. Nothing much happened this far from Earth. Jake liked it that way. He had spent 20 years fighting in colonial wars and putting down rebellions. He had earned his quiet. Lieutenant Morgan Price walked into the command center. She was young, maybe 30, with short brown hair and sharp eyes. She had been assigned to the station 6 months ago, and Jake had grown to trust her judgment. Commander, we received something strange on the long-range array. Jake looked up from his coffee. Strange how? It is a distress signal from very far away, a species called the... She placed a data pad on his desk. They are under attack by something called the Dominion. Their world is being destroyed. Jake picked up the pad and read the message. It was simple and desperate. Please help us. We are dying. Anyone who can hear this, please come. Have any other species responded? Morgan shook her head. We intercepted communications from the Galactic Council. No one is going to help them. They are too powerful. Everyone is afraid. Jake set down the pad and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Somewhere out there, an entire species was being killed. Women, children, old people, all of them dying because no one was brave enough to stand up for them. He thought about his own world. Earth had faced dark times, wars, plagues, disasters, but humans had always survived because they stood together. They fought for each other. They did not abandon the weak. Get me Admiral Lisa, he said quietly. Morgan hesitated. Sir, We have no treaties with we have never even met them. If we get involved in this, we could start a war with a species we know nothing about. I know. They have thousands of ships. We have less than 50 combat-ready vessels. I know. People will die, Commander. A lot of people. Jake turned to face her. His eyes were hard, but there was something else there too, something that looked like anger. Lieutenant, somewhere out there, an alien species sent out a call for help. They asked the entire galaxy to save them, and everyone said no. Everyone looked at the numbers and decided it was not worth the risk. He took a breath. That is not who we are. That has never been who we are. Morgan was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I will contact Admiral. The call went through 20 minutes later. Lisa appeared on the screen. She was older than Jake, with silver hair pulled back in a tight braid. She had commanded human forces for longer than most soldiers had been alive. Her eyes were cold and calculating, but she listened to everything Jake had to say. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. You understand what you are asking, she said. This is not our fight. No one will blame us if we stay out of it. I understand, Admiral. If we do this, we will be going against the wishes of every major power in the galaxy. We will be alone. Yes. Lisa leaned back in her chair. A small smile crossed her face. Then I suppose we had better make it count. Start prepping the fleet, Commander. We leave in 48 hours. Jake felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. Yes, Admiral. As the connection ended, Morgan looked at him with a mixture of fear and admiration. Why are we doing this? She asked. We do not know these people. We owe them nothing. Jake walked back to the window and stared at the stars. Because no one else will, and that is exactly why we have to. Far away, on a burning world, Ambassador felt his communication device vibrate. He looked at the screen and saw two words he had never expected to see. Message received. He did not know if it meant anything. He did not know if the humans would really come. But for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel something other than despair. Someone had answered. 6 weeks later, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace near the system. 47 warships appeared out of nowhere, their hulls dark and covered in weapons. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out across the void like a pack of wolves. Admiral Lisa stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance. She had not slept in 2 days. Around her, the crew worked in tense silence, checking systems and preparing for battle. Through the main, she could see It was a beautiful planet, covered in blue oceans and green forests, but parts of it were burning. Great clouds of smoke rose from the surface where cities had once stood. And surrounding the planet like a swarm of insects were the ships of the Dominion. There were hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Their bioorganic hulls pulsed with a sickly green light, and their weapons were already charging. Tactical officer looked up from his station. He was a young man with nervous eyes. Admiral, I count over 800 vessels in the system. Their command ship is positioned in high orbit over the planet. Lisa nodded calmly. Any response to our arrival? Not yet, they seem to be surprised. She smiled slightly. Good, let them be surprised. On the command ship, Commander stared at his display screen with all 4 of his eyes. He was a massive creature standing nearly 3 meters tall. His body was covered in hard black chitin and his mouth was full of sharp teeth. He had conquered 40 worlds. He had killed millions. Nothing scared him. But he did not understand what he was seeing. Humans, he said slowly. Why are there humans here? His tactical officer, a smaller named, checked the readings again. Unknown, Commander. They emerged from hyperspace 17 minutes ago. They are holding position at the edge of the system. Clicked his teeth together in confusion. The humans were a minor species. They had a small territory on the far side of the galaxy. They had no connection to They had no reason to be here. "Open a channel," he ordered. "I will speak to them." Admiral watched as the alien face appeared on her screen. She had seen images of the before, but seeing one in person was different. He was a nightmare, a monster, and he looked at her with the arrogance of someone who had never known defeat. "Humans," said. His voice was deep and grinding like rocks being crushed together. "You are far from your territory. This system belongs to the Dominion. Leave now and we may forget this trespass." Lisa kept her face calm. "I am Admiral Lisa of the United Earth Defense Force. We received a distress signal from the people. We are here to answer it." Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Though they are prey, weak creatures who could not defend themselves. We have already destroyed most of their cities. Their military is gone. Their leaders are hiding like animals." He leaned closer to the camera. "Why would you fight for them?" Lisa thought about the message she had read. She thought about the desperate words of a dying species, begging the galaxy for help. She thought about all the other powers who had said no. "Because someone has to," she said simply. Stopped laughing. For a moment something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, perhaps, or the first small seed of doubt. "You cannot win this battle, human. We have more ships than you. Our warriors are stronger. Our weapons are more powerful. If you fight us, you will die." Lisa leaned forward in her chair. "Maybe, but we did not come here to survive. We came here to send a message." She cut the transmission. Around her the bridge crew was silent, cleared his throat. "Admiral, he is right. We are outnumbered almost 20 to 1. Even with our technology advantage, the odds are not good." Lisa stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. She looked at each of her officers in turn. Some of them were young. Some of them had families waiting back on Earth. All of them had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not come back. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "What happens in the next few hours will be remembered for 1,000 years. Every species in this galaxy is watching. They want to see what humans are made of. They want to know if we will run when things get hard." She took a breath. "We are not going to run. We are going to show them something they have never seen before. We are going to show them that there is one species in this galaxy that will fight for the weak, that will stand up against bullies, that will never, ever give up." She raised her voice. "All hands, battle stations. Let us show these monsters what Earth-born monsters can do." The first human missiles launched from their tubes and streaked across the void. They were fast, faster than anything they had ever seen. They slammed into the first line of ships, and the darkness lit up with fire. Watched in shock as 3 of his ships exploded in seconds. He had not expected the humans to attack first. He had not expected them to be so aggressive. "Return fire," he roared. "Destroy them all." The battle had begun. On the planet below, Ambassador looked up at the sky. He could see bright flashes of light in orbit, explosions, ships dying. He had heard the reports. The humans had come. They were actually fighting. Young stood beside him. "Ambassador, what are they doing? They are so few, that will destroy them." Shook his head slowly. "I do not think so. I have heard stories about humans. They are not like other species. They do not fight the way we expect." "What do you mean?" He pointed up at the sky, where another bright flash marked the death of a ship. "Watch and you will understand." In orbit, the human fleet was taking damage. 2 destroyers had already been destroyed. 3 more were crippled. But for every human ship that fell, 10 vessels died. Human weapons were faster, more accurate, more deadly. Human pilots flew their ships with a reckless courage that they could not understand. One pilot, a young woman named Sarah Collins, flew her damaged fighter directly into the bridge of a cruiser. She died instantly, but she took 500 enemy soldiers with her. Another ship, the destroyer Valiant, was surrounded by a dozen vessels. Its captain, a man named Peter, ordered his crew to abandon ship. Then he overloaded the reactor and rammed the nearest enemy command vessel. The explosion was so bright that it could be seen from the planet's surface. Watched the battle data scroll across his screen. His hands were shaking. "They are dying," he whispered. "They are dying and they just keep fighting." Admiral stood steady as the Defiance shook from an enemy impact. "That is what humans do," she said quietly. "We do not stop, we do not surrender, we fight until the end." On the command ship was screaming orders. He had never seen anything like this. The humans were losing ships, but they did not retreat. They did not try to negotiate. They just kept attacking, wave after wave, with no regard for their own lives. "What is wrong with them?" he demanded. "Why do they not run?" No one had an answer. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it was finally over, the human fleet had lost 11 ships, but they had lost over 200. And for the first time in the history of his species, new fear. The orbital battle was only the beginning. While Admiral kept the fleet busy in space, human ground forces dropped from the sky. Thousands of soldiers fell through the burning atmosphere in armored pods, landing in the ruins of cities. Their mission was simple: find survivors, protect them, and kill any that got in the way. Captain Cole hit the ground hard. His pod crashed through what had once been a beautiful crystal building, sending shards of glass flying in every direction. He was out before the dust settled, his rifle ready, his eyes scanning for threats. Around him, his squad landed one by one, 12 soldiers. That was all he had, 12 humans against thousands of ground forces. "Everyone good?" he called out through his helmet radio. The responses came back one by one. Everyone was alive. A few were injured. No one complained. Sergeant Torres was the last to respond. She was a tough woman with dark skin and a scar across her jaw. She had served with for 5 years. He trusted her more than anyone. "We are good, Captain. What are our orders?" Checked his scanner. The city was called, and it had once been home to 500,000. Now it was mostly rubble. But his scanner showed life signs. Hundreds of them, survivors hiding in the ruins. "There are civilians nearby. We move to protect them. Kill anything that is not human or..." They moved through the destroyed streets in formation. The ground was covered in ash and broken glass. Bodies lay everywhere. Most of them were, their blue skin pale in death, but some were killed by defenders who had fought to the last. Private Aaron was the youngest member of the squad. He was only 22, fresh out of training. He stared at the dead with wide eyes. "I have never seen anything like this," he whispered. Put a hand on his shoulder. "Stay focused, Private. We cannot help the dead, but we can save the living." They found the survivors in an underground shelter. Over 300 were packed into a space meant for 100. Women, children, old people. They looked up at the human soldiers with a mixture of fear and hope. A woman approached. She was holding a small child in 2 of her 4 arms. Her eyes were wet with tears. "You are the humans," she said. Her voice was tired and broken. "You came." Removed his helmet so she could see his face. "We came, you are safe now." The woman started to cry. So did many of the others. They had been waiting to die. They had accepted that no one would save them. And then these strange creatures from a distant world had appeared out of nowhere. "Why?" the woman asked. "Why did you come? We have nothing to give you. We are strangers." Did not have a simple answer. He thought about his home, his family, his planet. He thought about all the times in human history when his species had faced destruction. They had survived because they fought together, because they refused to give up. "Because you asked for help," he said finally, "and we heard you." They attacked 20 minutes later. They came in a wave of black chitin and sharp claws. There were at least 100 of them, moving through the ruins with terrifying speed. Their weapons fired green energy bolts that melted through stone and metal. Positioned his squad at the entrance to the shelter. 12 humans against 100 monsters. "Hold this position," he shouted. "No one gets past us." The battle was brutal. Human rifles cracked in the smoky air. Warriors fell, but more kept coming. Private was hit in the shoulder but kept firing. Corporal Danny Wu lost his weapon and fought with his knife until another soldier threw him a spare rifle. Tors saw a warrior break through their line and charge toward the shelter. Without thinking, she tackled it. They rolled on the ground, the creature trying to bite her face off. She jammed her pistol under its chin and pulled the trigger. "These things are ugly," she muttered, pushing the body off her. The fight lasted 30 minutes. When it was over, all 12 human soldiers were wounded. 3 were seriously hurt, but not a single had reached the civilians. Leaned against a wall, breathing hard. His armor was cracked. His left arm was broken. He did not care. "Report," he gasped. 16 dead, reported. The rest pulled back for now. Aaron walked over. His face was pale and covered in alien blood. "Captain, we cannot hold out forever. They will come back with more." Nodded. "Then we hold until they do, and when they come, we hold again." Far above them, in the observation deck of a diplomatic vessel, Ambassador watched the battle data with growing disbelief. They were an old species, masters of logic and strategy. They had calculated that the humans could not win this war. The numbers were too one-sided. But the numbers did not seem to matter. "They are dying," said to his aide. "The humans are taking heavy casualties, yet they do not retreat." His aide, a younger named, studied the data streams. "It is illogical. They have no strategic interest in. They gain nothing from this battle. Why do they sacrifice themselves?" Watched as another human ship exploded in orbit. The crew had aimed their vessel at a carrier before the reactor blew, taking both ships to oblivion. "I do not know," he admitted. "I have never seen a species behave this way." On the planet's surface, human medics were treating wounded. They had set up a field hospital in the shelter, using their own limited supplies to help the alien civilians. One medic, a woman named Rachel, was operating on a child who had been hit by debris. "Hold still, little one," she said softly. "I know it hurts, but I am going to fix you." The child did not understand her words, but she understood the tone. She stopped crying and watched as the human worked to save her life. An older male watched this with tears in his eyes. He had fought for weeks. He had watched his friends die. He had lost hope. But now he saw these strange creatures, these humans, risking everything for people they did not know, bleeding for them, dying for them. "What are they?" he whispered. Another, one who had studied Earth before the war, answered quietly. "They call themselves humans. They come from a small world on the edge of the galaxy." He paused. "They are called many things by other species, dangerous, unpredictable, violent. And what do they call themselves?" The thought about it. They call themselves survivors. Back in the ruins of Cole received a message from Admiral. The fleet was falling back. The orbital battle was turning in their favor. Ground reinforcements were on the way. "Hold your position, Captain," said through the static. "You are doing something incredible down there. The whole galaxy is watching." Looked at his wounded soldiers. He looked at the civilians they had saved. He thought about the friends he had already lost. "We will hold, Admiral, no matter what." And they did. The final battle came 3 days later. They had pulled their remaining forces back to a defensive position near its largest moon. Their once mighty armada was now reduced to less than 200 ships. At the center of their formation sat the command vessel, a massive thing nearly 3 kilometers long. It was called the Devourer, and it had destroyed entire civilizations. Commander stood on the bridge of his dying ship. He had not slept in days. His officers were nervous, some of them openly afraid. For the first time in their history, they were losing. "Why do they not stop?" muttered to himself. "They have won, the planet is safe. Why do they keep coming?" His tactical officer had no answer. None of them did. In the human fleet, Admiral Lisa was preparing for the final assault. She had 31 ships left. Over 2,000 human soldiers and sailors had already died, but the job was not finished. "They are holding position near the moon," reported. "They seem to be waiting for us." Lisa studied the holographic display. She could see the enemy formation. She could count their remaining ships. She could calculate the odds. "They think if they make a stand, we will back down. They think we will be satisfied with a partial victory." She shook her head slowly. "They still do not understand us." She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral. The enemy is cornered. They have nowhere to run. Some of you might think we should offer them a chance to surrender. Some of you might think we have done enough." She paused. "But I want you to remember something. When the called for help, the laughed. When innocent people were dying, the celebrated. They chose to be monsters, and now they need to learn what happens when they meet bigger monsters." Her voice hardened. "All ships attack, no mercy, no surrender." The human fleet surged forward. Meanwhile, on Relay Station Omega, Commander Jake Harrison was leading a boarding party toward the command ship. A small group of human vessels had broken through the enemy lines, and now 3 assault shuttles were approaching the Devourer. Jake sat in the lead shuttle with 20 soldiers. Lieutenant Morgan Price was beside him, checking her weapon for the 10th time. "You know this is crazy, right?" she said. "Boarding an enemy command ship with 60 soldiers." Jake smiled grimly. "If we take out their fleet, we'll fall apart. This is the fastest way to end the war. And if we fail, then we die fighting, same as everyone else." The shuttles crashed into the hull of the Devourer, their cutting beams slicing through the bioorganic material. Alarms screamed throughout the alien vessel. Warriors rushed to repel the invaders. They were not prepared for what they found. Jake was the first one through the breach. He came out firing, his rifle dropping 3 before his boots hit the deck. Behind him, his soldiers poured into the corridor, their weapons blazing. They fought hard. They were bigger than humans, stronger, with natural armor and claws that could tear through metal. But the humans fought harder. They moved in teams, covering each other, never hesitating. When one fell, another took their place. Morgan shot a warrior in the face, then kicked its body aside. "Bridge is 3 levels up. Heavy resistance expected." Jake reloaded his rifle. "Then we go through them." The fighting was brutal. The corridors of the Devourer were narrow and dark, filled with steam and alien screams. Jake lost count of how many he killed. He lost track of time. All that existed was the next enemy, the next corner, the next step toward his goal. They lost soldiers along the way. A man named Gary fell when a blade went through his chest. A woman named Sandra died holding a corridor so the others could advance. Each death was a wound, but they kept moving. Finally, they reached the bridge. The doors were thick, designed to withstand assault. Jake pulled out his last explosive charge and placed it carefully. "Everyone back." The explosion tore the doors open. Jake led the charge through the smoke. Was waiting for them. The commander was massive, even bigger than the others. He stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his dead officers. In his claws, he held a weapon that glowed with deadly energy. "Humans," he growled, "you have destroyed everything, my fleet, my warriors, my honor." His eyes burned with hatred. "But you will not leave this ship alive." Jake stepped forward, his rifle pointed at the alien's head. "Your fleet attacked innocent people. You killed millions, women, children, people who never did anything to you." His voice was cold. "You do not get to talk about honor." Laughed bitterly. They were weak. They could not defend themselves. The strong always take from the weak. That is the way of the galaxy. Jake shook his head. "That was the way of the galaxy until you met us." Raised his weapon, Jake fired. The commander fell, his massive body crashing to the deck. He was not dead yet. His regenerative abilities were fighting to save him, but he could not move, could not fight. Jake walked over and stood above him. "You sent a message with your attack," Jake said quietly. "You told the galaxy that the strong can prey on the weak with no consequences." He raised his rifle one more time. "We sent a different message." The shot echoed through the dying ship. Outside, the fleet saw their command vessel go dark. The signal came moments later, was dead. The humans had won. Panic spread through the remaining ships. Some tried to flee, some surrendered, a few fought to the death. Within an hour it was over. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral received the report. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. Admiral said softly, "We won." She opened her eyes and looked at There was still there, still burning in places but still alive. Millions of people who would have died were now safe. "Yes," she said, "we did." Far below, on the surface of, Captain Cole watched the last shuttles flee toward space. His squad had held their position for 3 days. They had killed over 200 enemy soldiers. Only 7 of his original 12 were still alive. Tors sat beside him, bandaging a wound on her arm. "Is it over?" she asked. Nodded slowly. "It is over." They sat in silence for a while, surrounded by the ruins of a city they had saved. Around them, civilians were emerging from their shelters, looking up at the sky with wonder in their eyes. A small child walked over too. She was holding a flower, one of the few that had survived the bombing. She held it out to him with a shy smile. Took it gently. "Thank you," he said. The child did not understand his words, but she understood his smile. And that was enough. 3 months after the Battle of, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. Representatives from over 100 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of. They came to discuss what had happened. They came to understand. And for the first time in galactic history, they had invited humans to attend. Ambassador Greg Palmer walked into the chamber alone. He was not a soldier. He was not a politician. Back on Earth, he had been a schoolteacher from a small town in Ohio. He had taught history to children for 30 years. Now he was speaking for all of humanity. The assembly hall was enormous, filled with strange beings of every shape and size. Some floated in the air. Some moved on dozens of legs. Some communicated through lights and colors instead of sounds. All of them were watching him. The representative spoke first. He was a tall creature with silver skin and no visible eyes. "Ambassador Palmer, the Council has many questions about the events at. Your species intervened in a conflict that did not involve you. You sacrificed thousands of lives for a species you had never met. We do not understand why." Greg took a deep breath. He thought about all the soldiers who had died. He thought about the families that would never see their loved ones again. He thought about the price humanity had paid. "You want to know why we came," he said. His voice was quiet but steady. "Why we sacrificed so much for strangers." He looked around the chamber. "The answer is simple. We heard someone crying for help, and we answered." A murmur went through the crowd. The ambassador rose from his seat. "But the cost, the risk. Our calculations showed that intervention was not strategically viable. Your losses were severe. You could have been destroyed. It was illogical." Greg nodded slowly. "Maybe. You are right that we had nothing to gain. No territory, no resources, no treaties. By every measure you use, it made no sense for us to fight." He paused. "But where we come from, there is a saying. The measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. They were vulnerable. They were dying. And no one cared." His voice grew stronger. "We decided to care." The chamber was silent. No one knew how to respond. This was not how galactic politics worked. Species did not sacrifice themselves for strangers. They did not fight wars for principles. They calculated costs and benefits and acted accordingly. But the humans had done something different, and the entire galaxy was trying to understand. Ambassador of rose to speak. He was old and frail, and the war had aged him further, but his voice was clear. My people would be dead if not for the humans. Our cities would be dust. Our children would be memories. He looked at Greg with deep gratitude. We owe them a debt that can never be repaid. They asked for nothing in return. They simply came because we needed them. He turned to face the council. I have lived for 3 centuries. I have seen many species rise and fall. I have watched empires crumble and new ones take their place, but I have never seen anything like this. The humans are not like us. They are something new, something the galaxy has never seen before. Another representative, a creature from a species called the, spoke up. His voice was harsh and skeptical. Perhaps they are simply foolish. Perhaps they do not understand the dangers of the galaxy. They are young. They will learn. Greg smiled sadly. You think we do not understand danger? My species has been fighting wars since before we learned to write. We have killed each other over land, over religion, over ideas. We have come close to destroying ourselves many times. He shook his head. We understand danger better than you can imagine, but we also understand something else. If good people do nothing when evil happens, then evil wins, every time, without exception. He stepped forward, his eyes moving across the chamber. When they attacked, every major power in this room made the same decision. You calculated the risks, you measured the costs, and you decided that the lives of millions of innocent people were not worth the trouble. His voice hardened. We made a different choice, and yes, we paid a price. Over 2,000 of our people died. Their families are grieving right now. Their children will grow up without parents. That pain is real. It matters. He paused. But if we had to do it again, we would make the same choice. Because some things are more important than survival. Some things are worth dying for, and protecting the helpless is one of them. The representative sneered. Pretty words, but words do not win wars. Your small fleet cannot protect everyone. You cannot be everywhere. Eventually, you will face a threat too large to fight. Then what? Greg looked at him calmly. Then we will die trying. And maybe that sounds foolish to you. Maybe you cannot understand why anyone would sacrifice themselves for strangers, but that is the difference between us. He turned back to the full council. Humanity is not asking for your approval. We are not asking for your help. We came here today because you wanted to understand us. So here is your answer. We believe that the strong should protect the weak. We believe that evil should be fought wherever it appears. And we believe that the galaxy can be better than it is. He took a final breath. You can join us or not. That is your choice. But know this. The next time someone sends out a distress call, the next time an innocent world faces destruction, humanity will answer, whether you approve or not. He walked out of the chamber without looking back. The council sat in stunned silence for a long time. 1 month later on Relay Station Omega, Commander Jake Harrison stood at the window and watched the stars. His arm was still in a sling. His body still ached from wounds that would take months to heal. But he was alive, and so were millions of who would have died without him. Lieutenant Morgan Price walked up beside him. I just received word from Earth, she said. 3 more species have applied to join the new alliance. The, obviously, but also the and the. They want to stand with us. Jake nodded slowly. The others will come around eventually, or they will not. Either way, we know who we are. Morgan was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? All those people we lost, all the suffering, was it worth it? Jake thought about the question. He remembered the faces of the soldiers who had died under his command. He remembered the child who had given him a flower in the ruins of her city. He remembered the look in his eyes at the end, when the monster finally understood what he was facing. Yeah, he said finally, it was worth it. Across the galaxy, the story was spreading. A small species from a distant world had done the impossible. They had answered a call that no one else would answer. They had fought a war that no one else would fight, and they had won. The Dominion was broken. Their remaining forces were scattered, afraid. Other predatory species watched and learned. The galaxy was changing. And at the center of that change was a small blue planet called Earth, a world of creatures who called themselves human, creatures who fought like demons but loved like angels, creatures who would die for strangers and never ask for anything in return. The galaxy had a new message now, a warning, a promise. The monsters of Terra were watching, and they would answer any call for help, anywhere in the universe, no matter the cost. Because that was what humans did. And they would never, ever stop.